This is Back to Back.
What's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. It's my podcast, my little labor of love, and I am happy to have you guys here. How is everybody? How was your week? I hope everybody's good. I'm feeling great. Had a pretty chill week of just getting a lot of work done. I was up in LA for a couple days. My manager, who does not live in LA, was up there visiting, so I rolled up and had a meeting about everything we're doing till the end of the year and beyond. You know, doing this show this whole year, it's been a ton of work to get it off the ground. It's been way more than I thought it was going to be. And one of the results of that is that my music output slowed down a little bit. It was not intentional. I was not expecting it. But it's cool. It gave me some time to sort of refocus on what I'm doing and really hone in on what the next wave of my sound is going to be. So I'm going to drop kind of a little taste of that in a couple weeks. And of course, I'll announce that on the show. But man, we've got a lot lined up for 2018. A lot of new music. I think it's some of the best I've ever done. And I'm pretty stoked on it. So you guys will hear a lot more about that. But let's talk about right now. Today on the show, this is awesome. Henley Halem is my guest. Henley is a part of Teamwork Management, one of the most influential management companies in dance music. Henley manages Flosstradamus, Valentino Khan, Bro Safari, Jet & Johns, Dyro, Ducky, Branches, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's only his current roster. In the 90s, he was managing incredible hip-hop acts like the Beatnuts, Nonfiction, Big Daddy Kane, Jurassic 5. This guy has had an incredible career. His story is really inspiring. By the time you guys are done with this, you are going to learn a ton about the music business from the view of somebody who has been there making it run for decades. Henley's just one of a kind, man. The way he thinks about the business, the things he's seen, he's just got a great perspective. So we had a great conversation. I'm going to get into that just in a minute here. Real quick, some business off the top. Don't forget to subscribe to Back to Back. It means a lot to us. Our subscriber numbers really count for something. That's something advertisers look at when they decide they want to work with us. That's something that helps us get more influence, get bigger guests for you guys, everything. And it's free and it's easy. Click the little subscribe button on any app that you're using to listen. If you're on SoundCloud, just follow the Back to Back account. Every time I post a new episode, if you're subscribed, that episode just gets delivered straight to your ears. It'll be there waiting for you when you wake up or when you go to sleep or when you wake up in the middle of the night having a terrible dream. Because, you know, when that happens, you're really going to need my soothing voice to help put you back down. If you really love us, you can leave a rating on iTunes and a review. That's another thing that really does help the show and is free and easy to do. Just go to the show's page on iTunes, leave us a review, and that's it. Thank you. That helps a lot. So, now that you guys have helped me, I want to help you back. This is really cool. This is a brand new thing. I linked up with my friends from Fruity Loops, and we are going to give away some copies of Fruity Loops Studio for free to listeners of this show. This is fucking cool, guys. So listen, if you're an aspiring producer, Fruity Loops is one of the pillars of modern producing. There's really only a few main DAWs that people use to make music in 2017, and Fruity Loops is one of the big ones. Incredible program used by people like Laidback Luke, GTA, pretty much any rap producer you've ever heard of, and so many more. 7 Lions. I could go on and on. So if you're an aspiring producer and you want to know what Fruity Loops is all about, we're going to give it to you for free. Here's what you have to do. First part, you have to follow me on Twitter and you have to follow the show on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Willy Joy, and the show's account is Back to Back Pod. Go follow both of those accounts. And once you do that, what I want you to do is send a tweet to me and to a guest that you'd like to see appear on the show. Your favorite artist, doesn't matter how big they are, just send out a tweet to me and a guest that you would like to see appear on this show, and just tell them in that tweet that they should come be a guest on Back to Back Pod. And that's it. At the end of the week, we're going to compile all of your tweets, and we're going to pick a random winner out of those tweets. So just to recap, you have to follow me, Willy Joy, and the show Back to Back Pod on Twitter. Then send out a tweet to me and to your favorite artist that you would love to see appear on the show, and tell them that you want to see them appear as a guest on the show. And we're going to pick out a random winner. You're going to get a free copy of Fruity Loops Studio. And that's it. I just want to give something back to you guys. We're going to do this for a few weeks. There's going to be new instructions next week. But for this week, you know what you got to do. So get on Twitter, get tweeting, and somebody's going to win some Fruity Loops. Just my little way of saying thank you guys for listening. All right, so let's get into today's episode. Henley and I met up in Los Angeles. We actually recorded this at Valentino Khan's new ridiculous house in LA. I'm kind of obsessed with the house. It's like a cartoon dream house. There's a giant medieval portrait of Valentino on the wall, jacuzzi in the back. And Valentino makes a clutch guest appearance on this podcast. So if you listen hard, you're going to hear him pop up a couple different places. And like I said earlier, I met Henley originally through Flosstradamus Kurt, but I had been aware of him and his work for a long time before that. He's worked with so many influential artists in the music industry over the years. Henley also worked as an A&R at Ultra Records, one of the biggest dance labels out. He's worked for major labels. He's worked for small labels. He's been a manager for 20 plus years. And look, this is just a glimpse into this industry that you're not going to get anywhere else. I had been wanting to get Henley on the show for a while. I was glad we could finally link up to do it. Every time I get to hang out with him, I learn something. We have some laughs. It's just a good time. I like the dude. And I think you're going to like him too. He's a true original. Let's get into this right now. This is me and Henley Halem back to back. Let's go.
Check 1, 2.
Yeah, perfect.
Get my rap voice going.
Did you ever aspire to be a rapper at any point in your life?
I
did, so it's okay if you did.
I wouldn't say that I inspired to be a rapper, but I did make 2 rap songs in my life.
Okay.
And oddly enough, this was probably in the 92 to 94 time period.
Yeah.
They were both diss songs to other crews of people in DC. I kind of think before, I recall the beef songs.
Yeah.
Not saying I started that, but
okay, it's on record. Henley invented rap beef.
Oddly enough, it was the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
Because
why is that odd?
It's almost like I've been contemplating doing this podcast. I'm super excited about doing it, but will I listen to it? Because the thought of hearing my voice rap, it was like pins and needles.
Yeah, well, it's always weird to hear your own voice on anything. Doing this podcast, I had to listen to way too much of I'm used to it now, but yeah, that's always weird. So, I mean, were the people you were dissing, were they rap crews you were dissing?
It was weird.
Or just people you didn't like?
I was DJing in DC. I was probably 17 or 18 years old. Through DJing, I just always would meet other different people. And I became close with this rap group that really wanted me to be their DJ. And a weird thing happened that involved drugs and money from drugs, and somehow a buddy of mine, this is such a crazy story, a buddy of mine, he had numerous safes in different people's houses to keep cash and bud in, so that way everything wasn't all at his parents' house.
It's
meanwhile,
decentralized.
This is 17 to 19 years old, you know?
Ahead of his time.
So I was if you want to have you can have a safe in my house. I didn't even have the code to the safe, but somehow $300 from the cash in the safe disappeared. Now, I just took the cash out when he gave me the code and gave it to this guy that he told me to give it to. And
Right.
that guy gave it to him and said it was short $300.
You're right. Who knows?
If I took the $300, I would gladly say, you know what? Yeah, I fucking took $300 for you
Right.
from you, but I didn't. And like because of that, it became like this whole like beef.
Sure, yeah.
Weird thing.
He said, she said kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such childhood nonsense.
Yeah, it sounds about right, but that's a fairly serious form of childhood nonsense. I was not.
Yeah, but it was never at a level where someone was going to stab me or shoot
Right.
me. It was just more so like, oh, we don't fuck with him anymore. He stole money from our boy.
Yeah. Is DC? Did you grow up there entirely?
I was born in Los Angeles.
Okay.
I left here to DC where my mother had grown up her whole life when I was 3. I came back to LA when I was maybe 6 for another year, and then went back to DC and
Okay.
pretty much grew up. Like most people who say they grew up in DC, I grew up on the outskirts of Maryland, just outside of
Okay,
the
yeah, I was
district.
going to ask because I lived in Northeast DC for a couple of years, and I always had that experience. Anytime I would tell, because I was in actual Northeast DC, but
Yeah.
anytime I would tell someone that, they always say, "Oh, I lived in DC too," and it's always
Yeah,
Virginia or Maryland.
I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. I did not live in Northeast DC, which actually Northeast DC apparently is a very a very lovely place to live these days.
Well, it's gentrifying fast.
Yeah.
The place I lived when I was there was not particularly nice, and
Yeah.
the way I knew, DC is really expensive. Like the cost of living is high, and when I moved there, I could only afford a certain amount in rent, and so I just picked a place that looked nice. I hadn't seen it yet, and I moved in, and. The rapper Fat Trell?
Yes.
So he's a DC rapper, and he had just put out a new mixtape like a few weeks after I moved. And I checked out the new tape, and I was listening to it, and then I happened to look at the album art, and it was like a classic, like him and his posse posted up on the corner, guns.
block
and
from where your place was?
Yeah. There was like a street sign on it, on the mixtape. And it was like a few blocks from where I lived. And I was like, oh, I made a mistake.
As a kid, we would go to Northeast DC at like 16 or 17 years old because there used to be this place on Georgia Avenue called Sing Along. It had nothing to do with singing. You just basically could walk in there and be a 14-year-old kid and buy a 40.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Is that what you were doing at 14?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between 14 and, give or take between 14 and 16.
How did you start DJing? How did you get into that?
One of my really close friends bought turntables. I remember coming over to the house. I didn't know that he had bought turntables. And I was like, this is dope. And he had maybe like a half a crate of records. And he's like, I'm going to jump in the shower. Feel free to mess around with it. And I was like, okay, cool. I was just blown away. I was like, wow, this is cool. Like you play music. I didn't have the concept of what the pitch was about or anything.
Had you seen people DJ? Or
I had seen people DJ. Obviously, I was a kid who grew up on like Yo MTV Raps and Rap City on BET. And, I knew what a DJ was and what they do. But like, basically, like I was just one of those kids, like all I tried to do was put a record on and scratch.
Yeah, of course.
And like totally like I looked at the crossfader and like, this makes sense. Off, on. And I would just try to scratch. And then I think I was watching Yo MTV Raps Countdown, like on a Saturday. Probably was 15, 16 years old. And Common Sense then, now Common, his song for, I believe, I Used to Love Her. At the end of the video, there's this young kid DJing. And my friend who like probably had started DJing maybe 3 or 4 months prior wanted to upgrade what he had. He had two 1200s and this Gemini mixer that was like a 4-channel long mixer.
Sure.
And he wanted to go to the Scratchmaster 2-channel mixer and like not use a coffin anymore. So I called him and he was like, I'll sell you the long mixer and the coffin. And I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
Like I'm down. It was like it was like a 4-channel mixer and it had a sampling bank in it. And it had a 16-bar sample bank and then 4-bar sampling banks, or maybe 16 seconds, 8 seconds, and then a couple were 4 seconds
That
apiece.
sounds right, yeah.
So I got that, and my mom had a friend that just happened like that weekend she was going to hang out with, and she told him, oh, Henley he wants to be a DJ. And he was like, oh, I have this turntable. He can have it. Like, I've never used my turntable. And it wasn't like a technique. It was techniques were belt-driven or not belt-driven?
No, they were not belt-driven.
They were not belt-driven. So this was a belt-driven turntable.
Right, old school.
Like totally old school where like not made for DJing.
Right.
So I had that and I had a CD player. And I basically would play a song from the CD player. Then I would sample a portion of it, then mix into the song on vinyl.
Wow.
And then I would sample something on the CD player and never be able to properly get it on beat because
Right.
even though it had the sampler in it, I don't think it really had a way to change the tempo of what you were doing.
Right.
So, but I was just getting an understanding of what it was. And then finally, like when I was like 3 or 4 months like into it, I was like, I need to have 1200s, but like where am I able to get that kind of money? And I mean, I had like, I did work, but like, you know, the 1200s were still like $1,000 or something like that. And I went to my mom and I was just like, you know, I have this bar mitzvah money from when I was 13. Can I just buy turntables with it? And she was like, but that money is supposed to go to when you need books in college.
Very practical
and or just like
answer.
some practical thing. And I looked at her and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is something I really want. And like literally, like maybe I had my entire bar mitzvah money collectively combined was maybe $3,000.
Right.
You know, and I think the week after my bar mitzvah, my mom took me shopping, and I was allowed to spend $300 of the $3,000
Right.
on clothes, and I was like super excited about that.
Yeah, that would be huge as a kid.
That $3,000 went so far. I bought my turntables on that $3,000. I bought my first car, and that $300 in clothes.
I got to the point of being bar mitzvahed and decided not to be bar mitzvahed. My parents let me make that choice, but really my biggest regret at that age in not doing it was that I didn't get the money that I would have gotten, which just shows you it was probably the good
You know,
move not
I didn't
to do
even
it,
know you
but-
necessarily got the money. It was for me, it's just like typical teenage stuff. You know, like your parents are telling you to do something, so you really don't want to do it, but you're told you have no choice.
Right.
It was kind of like what Hebrew school and getting a bar mitzvah was. Now thinking back about it as an adult, like going to Hebrew school and learning how to read and write Hebrew, but have no idea what you're saying or being able to have a conversation with somebody in Hebrew is ridiculous.
Right.
But ultimately, I grew up in a neighborhood and I went to a school where like I was one of 3 Jewish kids, and like I probably was teased about being Jewish in like middle school.
Sure.
So like having my bar mitzvah, I was very weary about inviting people. I ended up inviting friends from middle school, but I was really nervous about inviting girls.
Sure,
So I didn't invite any girls to my bar mitzvah.
Well, I mean, when you're in middle school, the last thing you want to do is draw attention to what makes you stand out.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
It's funny because we flip that when we become adults, you know, then it's like you try to figure out why, you know, what you are good at, what makes you unique. But in middle school, you just want to fit in, man.
Yeah. And then I had the bar mitzvah and it was great. It was fun. But of course, like a typical bar mitzvah, like friends steal a bottle of liquor from behind the bar. They're drinking in the bathroom. One kid gets too wasted. He throws up. It becomes a whole thing.
Were you involved in the local music scene at that time, or was DJing sort of the entry point to what would eventually later become
DJ was kind of more of the entry point, I'd say, because of being a teenager in high school. You know, you couldn't get into like clubs or any of that kind of stuff really just yet. So I engulfed myself in hip hop and just was a huge fan, and just would go into the basement and practice, and just people would like just call me like, "Hey, can we just hang out and smoke weed while you DJ? That seems cool." And I was like, "Yeah, you know, my parents worked, my mom smokes weed, so like my house was the place to come and smoke weed." And then like we would do parties on the weekends, and I would bring my stuff out and I would DJ. And as I like grew more of a repertoire of vinyl. After getting my 1200s, you know, it just kind of became a thing that there was a party somewhere and Henley was going to be DJing.
That's when you want to do it, right? Is when it's still fun, you know, before it's a job. I think that's kind of when you learn the most is when you're not trying to and when you're just kind of in the moment and,
absolutely.
and experiencing it.
And the great thing about it too was like, you know, coming up and like learning how to DJ and like playing these parties or house parties, or even I eventually I started doing like little like parties in DC and just on the outskirts of Maryland, but no one was questioning how good or bad my scratching was or my mixing ability.
Right.
It was just like, oh, there's someone DJing, and that's really cool.
Yeah, you were just providing the party, man.
Yeah.
So how did you leave DC? When did that happen? At 18?
Yeah, I left. I wanted to, I wasn't sure about where I wanted to go to school, but I was kind of like getting the parental, like, you need to go to college. And I was like, all right. So I had a book of all the universities and colleges in the United States, and they were marked by how hard they were to get into and what needed this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
I just went to New York City.
You knew you wanted to be in
I wanted to be in New York. My dad was from New York. My grandparents lived in Long Island, just outside of Queens, and I spent a lot of time in New York. And just over being a teenager and becoming a DJ, like the internet didn't exist, but going to places like, oh, I want to go to Bobito's Footwork, or I want to go to Fat Beats, or I want to go to this record
these
store.
legendary places.
Yeah, I would find these places and like go and take the train. And there was just something about New York I loved, and because I was so engulfed in just DJing and like hip hop, like I might as well go to school in New York. I have family there. Long Island University, Brooklyn campus, was an extremely marked school that was easy to get into. I applied to that school. I got into that school. I didn't apply anywhere else.
Okay.
It was in downtown Brooklyn, so it's like on the corner of Flatbush and DeKalb Avenue, which is fairly central and like right after when you come into Brooklyn from like the Manhattan Bridge. I think within the first 24 hours of moving into my dorms a week before school started, I filled out a paper. Like there's people from Discover Card, like, hey, fill this out, get a credit card. Filled it out. I had a credit card like in 2 days.
Okay.
with like a $2,000 budget.
Of course.
Beach Street was literally 4 blocks away in Albee Square Mall. I went to Beach Street. In the matter of 3 days, I probably spent the entire credit card balance on vinyl, thinking that like vinyl was going to disappear tomorrow, and like I just had to have this.
Of course.
Yeah.
When it's your first credit card too, I mean that's a kind of freedom too, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't really know how it works, and it's sort of just free.
And
money.
I was like, I'm going to school. Like, how am I paying? I'm not paying this.
Yeah.
Like, where am I making money right now? Like, I just moved to New York. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, make sure I have enough money in loans to go to school.
What were you studying in school?
I have no idea. I mean, literally.
Great answer.
It was just basic.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I could say I was going for a communications degree. I took, like, you had to take the main, English and a language and this, that, and the third. And then my electives were more so like music production and stuff like that.
Sure. But it sounds like overall, that was not the focus.
No, I was doing what I was asked to do, but I chose to put myself in what I thought was like the most amazing setting to be in.
Right.
For a grandiose idea of maybe becoming a DJ one day.
So that at the time you thought you could be a DJ. Like
I don't
that
think
was the
I
goal.
thought that far, but probably that was definitely what it was.
Yeah.
Like to be out and DJ in New York City versus in
So how did
Maryland
that
and
evolve
DC.
once you were there? If you moved there with that idea, how did that idea end up kind of mutating and changing?
Within 2 weeks, I had my own show on the college radio station. The college radio station broadcasted about a 4-block radius and played on cable TV on a channel called BCAT, Brooklyn Cable Access Television. And it was just like I didn't care who the audience was. I just wanted okay, I have a radio show now.
Yeah.
And now that I have a radio show, I can go and there's promos that you get. There's free
The perks. Yeah.
There's free vinyl. Oh, okay. Call this guy. And every Wednesday at 550 Madison, where Sony was Columbia and Epic and Jive give DJs promos. And like literally you just go in, you sign into security, you go upstairs to like the radio promo floor. Hey, how you doing? Here's your promo. Here's your promos for the week, and keep it moving. And like I would do that, and then buying 12 inches, and like I had this like radio show. I never recorded one radio show. I don't think we even had that. Like we even had the ability to record the show that we had. We just were able to do a show that broadcast for 4 blocks and be on this Brooklyn Access television channel.
I mean, I think that's a very typical college radio kind of situation where it's much less so about what you're creating, but more so about kind of becoming immersed in that world, right? And becoming a part of the label ecosystem, getting music from them and learning how you could put a show together and kind of just learning. I mean, it's like anything else in college. It's learning how things work versus doing them professionally.
Yeah. I think what really took things off was being from Maryland. I didn't necessarily know him, but I remember playing kind of like a rave that was half hip hop, half at the time. I wouldn't even call it dance music. I used to call it noise.
We'll get to that later.
But I feel like Aaron LaCrate was from Baltimore.
Yeah.
And he was also DJing the event. And I became friendly with him. And Aaron at the time was from Baltimore, lived in New York City, was a booking agent for a guy named Jerry Aid, who had like the New Kids on the Block and all this different stuff.
Okay.
I just like, hey, like I live in New York too. Like I'm trying to be a DJ, and he would just like, oh great. Like we just kind of like became friends.
Yeah.
And what he would do, it's like if he was, he booked the Lost Boys on a show in Toronto. He'd be like, hey Henley, by this time I had finished my first year in college, and I was summertime back in Maryland, and I had planned on spending a year back in Maryland to figure out what it was I wanted to do or if I wanted to go back to school.
Right.
But yeah, so I remember being on the phone with Aaron, and he's like, hey, I got a gig for you to play with the Lost Boys. I was like, cool. So what's the details? Like, so it's round trip flight from DC to Toronto, a hotel, and $150 or $200.
Sure, yeah.
And I was like, awesome, let's go.
Yeah, at that time, that sounds great.
Literally, like I would just DJ for an hour or two, hip hop records, and then the artist would come on and do their performance. And because I was like in that setting, I got to meet who they were, and I wasn't a local, so like,
right.
And then like we would exchange information, cell phone numbers. There wasn't really email, or there was no email or text.
Right.
And like that, it was one thing, and then it was like, then I went and did another, and then I did another, and just kind of like that kind of came together. I eventually decided, okay, well, I'm going to move back to New York. I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to do these DJ gigs.
Yeah.
They weren't coming like often, but let's say they were like once a month, once every 2 months.
Yeah.
And then like I put myself like in the local, in the kind of scene. And like, so when I went back to it's really interesting. So DJ Soul, who's been a hip hop DJ for years.
Yeah.
Was 2 doors down on my floor in my dorms.
Oh wow!
So
okay.
we had made a relationship. This is all by chance. I happened to be getting out of the train station on Broadway Lafayette, and as I'm going out of the turnstile, I bump into him, and he gives me his card, and he's interning at Raucous Records.
Okay.
If I want an internship, let him know. Call him, boom, get an internship. So now I'm back in New York. Do the internship, and from doing the internship, you just meet just different people.
Right.
And the guy that I had interned for, he was really good friends with this guy, Peter Oasis and Svi Edelman, who owned a company called Live and Direct and did all of the hip-hop shows at what was Tramps, which was on like 21st Street between 5th and 6th by like the Limelight. Yeah. Every week you had, it was EPMD, or it was Gangstar, or it was Run DMC. It was like all the cool hip hop shows. I think it's the first time I ever like Eminem played, and it was like 1,000 to 1,200 cap room. So then I like became friends with them and like would help them with whatever they needed to help with. And then Aaron LaCrate would also, like Milk Crate Athletics, his clothing line, would also sponsor all the events. And sometimes I'd actually would get to DJ the events. And just kind of like got enamored in like the downtown New York kind of like hip hop scene.
Yeah, part of the community.
Yeah, and the guy that I interned for was very friendly with DJ Eclipse, who ran Fat Beats in New York.
Yeah.
He was like, yo, you should meet this kid. He's super hungry. He's a dope DJ. He's interning at here. He has a job, but like he really wants to be in this space. And boom, I met with him, and then I met with the owner of Fat Beats. He was hesitant to give me the job because the owner of Fat Beats really wanted to have people who worked at Fat Beats to be artists. At the time, I mean, you had Eclipse, who was fairly well known as a DJ in New York, but you also had like Ill Bill of Nonfiction work there. Q Unique of The Arsonist worked there. He liked having like artists behind the counter also working there. But he went ahead and was like, yeah, it's cool. If you want them, just give him a job. And the next thing you know, like I'm interning at Raucous and I have a job at Fat Beats. And to me, my world was over. Like I'm happy.
Yeah. I wanted to say for some of our listeners who may not be familiar, I mean, in that era, Raucous Records and Fat Beats, these legendary places, in hip hop. I mean, I think there were probably a lot of people who would have loved to be in that position. That was like for independent hip hop at that era, I can't think of more iconic names.
Yeah, and for all intents and purposes, like there was nothing about me that I should have had a job at those places. I just was super hungry.
Right.
And it like
was it persistence, or they could just tell?
I didn't have to beg for the internship at Raucous. I just was like, because I just wanted to throw myself into it. I didn't have to beg for the job at Fat Beats. It happened. I would probably say the people around me would probably say I was extremely eager, but it just happened, and then kind of just grow from there. Like I still at the time wasn't sure. Like I wasn't going to school, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do as far as like a career.
Right. But you just knew.
But I just knew like I wanted to put myself in these positions in something that I just really loved. I just felt that like if I had a job in something that I just was like totally in love with, that my adult life would just be so much more fulfilling than like just being at a desk, you know?
Amen, man. That's the dream, right?
Yeah. And it just happened. And then like I became friends with Ill Bill, and I worked with him 3 days a week, and would always like go to Brooklyn and go here and go there and go to this place. And because I worked at Fat Beats, any show I wanted to go to, we were selling tickets for. So I was able to go to shows, and and you just meet different people and different stuff. But like Bill and I became very, very close. He had a 3-bedroom apartment in Starrett City, which is like on the border of East New York and Canarsie.
Okay.
And it was like, yo, if you want to move in, you can move in. And I was like, well, what's the rent? And he was like $220. I can't remember where I was living, but like my rent was like all the money I was making was basically covering me to eat like Gray's papaya downstairs, which was like $2 for like 2 hot dogs and a papaya juice. My cigarettes, and I didn't have to pay for vinyl anymore because at Fat Beats you can just take. We all just took whatever we wanted. And I was like, yeah, fuck it. And then as we became friendlier and friendlier, and I hung out with the nonfiction guys, Bill would always complain that they never had management.
Right.
And at the time, they had signed a record deal with the indie rock label Matador, who really wanted to get into hip hop. They had signed The Arsonist first, and then they signed Nonfiction. And I just finally said to him one day, I was like, "I'll do it." And he was like, "Yeah, but you don't have the relationships. Like I have more relationships than you have." And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm hungry to work. You're saying you want a manager. You're my, I could still work at Fat Beats.
Right.
I could still do this, and I'll learn quickly what it is."
Did you know what you were volunteering? Like, what did you think a manager did at that point?
I don't think I thought, to be honest with you. I didn't really think. It was just like a progression. And because Bill kind of, he was the head of the horse when it came to nonfiction, he was like, all right, cool. Let's go have a meeting at Matador, and I'll introduce you as my manager. I was like, all right, cool. So now I'm managing nonfiction. And I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
But just kind of jumped in head first.
Well, and nonfiction particularly, they were such I don't know them personally, but, their music and their image was so out there, guns and drugs and violence. I mean, they projected themselves as pretty crazy people.
Yeah.
And that must have been a handful to
manage
as your first act,
They were white kids from the hood. I didn't look at it like that at the time, like in hip hop, Look, I mean, Raekwon, Ghostface, Wu-Tang, everybody was talking about guns and drugs and,
absolutely.
And realities of stuff that they saw. And a lot of nonfiction, too, is very sci-fi, very political.
I mean, I was obsessed with them personally.
Yeah. There was never any threat or any of that kind of stuff. And it was actually really cool. And because Bill ran the whole thing, I lived in an apartment with Bill. It was basically me and Bill were managing nonfiction. After maybe a year or so of working at Fat Beats, I kind of deaded I stopped doing the internship at Raucous. A buddy of mine, through a friend of the guy I was interning at Raucous with, was like, hey, it got me a job as a paralegal at some massive law firm. Had nothing to do with music at all.
Interesting.
And now I'm making $15 an hour. If I work past 6 p.m., I got a free meal from a choice of 3 different restaurants. And if I worked past 7 o'clock, I got a car service back to Brooklyn.
Not bad.
My job was to take off staples and put on paper clips. And my buddy controlled who the paralegals were, who were hired, and you went through this temp agency. And I told them I had graduated from college and I'm thinking about going to law school, and I just wanted to work in a law firm before I make a decision.
Right.
And he just hired me.
All the things they're supposed
Yeah, and
to
then,
say.
then they'd be like, okay, here's a stack of papers. When I mean like a stack of papers, I'm talking like a serious stack of fucking papers.
Yeah.
And like, if you find any of these words on this sheet of paper, take those pieces of paper and put it to the left. Everything else can go to the right. Like that was my job, making $14 an hour.
Wow.
And no matter whether I got there first or my boy got there first, we always clocked each other in when we both got there.
Nice.
Because no one paid attention. So we like, so then I started to learn the New York hustle and like how to like always to vary, like how to like take advantage of the system.
Right.
And then while I was doing that, I was managing nonfiction. Now, meanwhile, no email really. I mean, there was AOL.
Well, yeah. I mean, what did managing nonfiction or just managing a hip hop group in that day? I mean, what day to day, what were you actually doing for them?
It was a lot of administration stuff. It was a lot of like, okay, we're now signed to Matador. We're going to put out this record. You know, Bill had a vision of this artist he wanted to have do the Black Helicopter single. The art department at the record label would get with him, and then we would literally have to like. I don't think you could even email JPEGs at the time. You know,
everything was a lot more complicated.
Everything moved. Everything wasn't complicated. Everything moved a lot slower.
Sure,
and it kind of was just like keeping everything somewhat organized. And then dealing with the publicist or dealing with the quote unquote A&R at the label, and it was like booking studio time. It was like just simple, easy, like nothing brainless. I didn't really start learning stuff about it until Bill reconnected with a guy named T-Ray, who had been a producer for years in hip hop, who then moved to LA and got really big in like the more rock kind of world, where he produced like the Helmet albums and Judgment Day soundtracks.
Oh wow, okay.
Who had recently just did a deal at Warner's and had a record deal there and was looking to sign something. And Bill shared the demos of the album with him, and he was like, I love this. I want to sign it. And then it was like, all right, how do we get off of Matador? Like Matador is cool, but now we can be on this big major label with a guy who like gets us. That's kind of like when I first kind of like I was calling the lawyer all the time and kind of getting an understanding of like what the business took. And like, to be honest with you, like to get out of a record contract and go to another place, even in today's world, it's a bit of a shit show.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know, letting Matador know that we didn't want to be with them after only releasing one single.
Yeah, that's
and one 12-inch. Now, meanwhile, nonfiction too, they had a touring business, but it wasn't a consistent touring business. It was more like, you know, they would go and do a few shows in Europe, a few shows here, a few shows there. But still, you know, at that time, with having 4 or 5 12-inches out, you know, and selling around the world, they were getting a nice chunk of change to go do. Like, and literally, like, I was the manager, but I was the tour manager. And like, so we traveled everywhere with 5 people.
Is that one of the bigger differences between that era and now that you would say, as far as, you know, back then you could make a decent chunk of change, like you said, off of 12 inches and off of selling music, whereas now, I mean, not only can you not sell 12 inches, but, you know, even if you do sell a lot of downloads or a lot of streams, it's still touring is kind of the larger income stream, or at least has equaled out a bit.
Still at the level that what they were making into what like, you know, what people were making today,
right?
It's a total different world. I mean, literally, like back then, you know, we had all 5 flights covered, hotels, and, you know, anywhere between $3,000 and $4,000 or $5,000 a show.
Sure,
you know what I mean. And then in reality, you have 5 people or 4 people in the group and a manager taking 20%. I was making just as much money as everybody else, which I never thought as being weird. Because I read some book on music and it was like, oh, anywhere between 15 and 20. And because I was like going on the road and kind of like doing all this and putting my time and effort, I thought it, you know, it made sense. And I don't, you know, honestly, like at the time, like I didn't know what I was doing. It was just like a day-to-day thing.
Sure.
And then think about it now too. It's 18 years ago.
It's a long time.
It's a long, like I don't even remember what my day-to-day was. It was probably, I was on a phone and it was like, you know, talking to different people. Where things really kind of got bigger for me as a manager was when their lawyer, Theo Sadomeyer, who does Eminem, 50, Rick Ross. I mean, the list just like goes, probably the premier, like, you know, urban guy. He came, he was like, come to my office. I went to his office and he's like, Henley, meet the Beatnuts. Beatnuts meet Henley. You're now their manager. And meanwhile, like, I was like, you know, in high school, like I blew out speakers in my car listening to like the first Beatnuts EP.
Of course.
And I was like, oh, great, this is awesome. And it was like, all right, now go to Loud Records, introduce yourself with the guys.
Right.
Now, meanwhile, they had just released the No Escaping This single. It was like playing on radio a lot.
Big record.
And within 2 to 4 weeks, I was like on my first plane to Europe, doing a promo run with them. And at the time, they were signed to Loud Records, and the money that was being spent at major labels was like asinine. I got a car with a driver who carried a gun.
Wow.
Every day to pick me up in Brooklyn, then pick up the Beatnuts to do anything related to promotional towards the album.
Amazing.
Everywhere we traveled, if it was a more than a 4 or 5 hour flight, everybody was flown business class, even management. We did promo runs and we did shows for free, but the label paid them to do the shows. To kind of sum that up, with nonfiction, it was like a new thing, but when I picked up the Beatnuts, because they were like signed to a major label and had things going on, and they could go out and tour the United States on a bus tour, and I would like take them on tour, and then nonfiction would be support.
Sure. So that was really when you felt like a real manager?
Totally. And then at the time, like, although they had a U.S. kind of booking agent, still my phone would ring from promoters, and you would do things like it didn't matter. Like, I'd have a booking agent, but I'd also book shows. I would write contracts for shows. I would basically be the booking agent. I would be the manager in the Beatnuts side of things. I would also DJ the shows sometimes. Because of where the Beatnuts were, I kind of like, I grew a lot more and learned a lot more about the business much quicker. And ultimately, I utilized that to help nonfiction.
Right.
I found a producer by the name of Emil Haney, who I got introduced to through friends of mine who had managed the D12 guys. Sold a couple of his beats over the course of a week, and started managing him. So I had the Beatnuts, Emil, and them, and he was a producer in the hip-hop game.
And were you still working at the record store at this point?
At this point, I probably wasn't working at the record store anymore.
Yeah. So management was a full-time
Yeah, management was a
thing
full-time thing. I lived at Bill's house for a while, but then I eventually moved out because there was a little bit of a tension over the fact that like I had other priorities besides his, and just kind of wanted to keep things separate. And just kind of like built a life around that. I worked with Big Daddy Kane. To me, it wasn't necessarily like something like, it's just Big Daddy Kane at the latter part of his career, but it was more so like, okay, he does a lot of shows in like this kind of old school space. How can we bridge the gap from that? And like I would get him gigs in Canada or in Europe or in different places that he would go on tour. I stopped touring with my clients and just kind of like focused on like building a business. And then from there, I got into doing like marketing things here and there for like independent records. And
Did you start your own company at that point?
at that point, I had my own management company. I didn't really have anybody working for me, and just was kind of like, in the hip hop, in the sense of it, I was a hustler. I had a lot of different things going on. I was wearing different hats.
Back to that New York hustle that we were talking about before.
Yeah, and just was like involved in many different things, and just having money come from numerous different places.
Keeping safes in different locations.
The safe thing went out the window after that one situation. But and just kind of like having fun with it. And then over the years of my career, so it was Big Daddy Kane for a while, and kind of got him into a place where he was like touring heavily, wasn't really focused on making music or any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
I was just kind of more like someone who could make things happen for people, but you could call me the manager or just like someone who brought business in, who took a piece and kept it moving.
Well, I mean, the term manager can mean a lot of different things for
Absolutely.
a lot of different artists, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because each artist has different needs, and each manager has certain skills, right?
Yeah. Towards Emil's, kind of like budding of his career, he started working heavily with Kid Cudi, and him and Plain Pat, did everything Kid Cudi, and then they brought me in to manage Cudi with the two of them and kind of handle more of the kind of touring and business aspect of stuff while they handled the creative.
What level was Cudi at that point? Was that kind of the beginning?
A Kid Named Cudi mixtape. I mean, look, Day and Night took what? 2 years to blow up, before the Crookers remix like really took off.
Yeah.
If I back up a little bit, there was a small period of time where I moved to LA. A buddy of mine who had managed Jurassic 5 and started working with Damian Marley, I came in and co-managed Jurassic 5 with him for about maybe 6 months to a year. And it was great. And I merged kind of like into this other management company. At the time, I probably had Emil. There was Jurassic 5. I had Rock Raider from the Executioners. And that was probably it.
Yeah.
And the guy whose company I kind of merged myself into, he was a big manager. He like ran the firm and then left the firm and started his own thing. And for whatever reason, it didn't feel right. Things were in my personal life were in a different space, and it just didn't go in a good place. And after like doing that for like 6 or 7 months, regardless of me how hard I was working and things were going great with Jurassic 5, at the end of the day, it was my friends' clients.
Right.
So and it just didn't work out. And I went back to New York. Went back to Maryland for like a month and just kind of chilled out. Was managing the guys I already managed. I always kind of had like my marketing kind of like street team hot side hustle thing going. A friend of mine that I'd known who I did a deal with for the Beatnuts at a label at the time called Ryko. He got a job running an urban division of Capitol and asked me to be the marketing product manager. I was like, yeah, sure. You know what? I'm going to try something new. I'm doing my management stuff, but I'll take this job and just see what it's like inside the label system versus, always being kind of on my own. And it was an experience. I mean, we put out Fat Joe, Make It Rain. It was an extremely successful song.
I was told there's a Fat Joe story I need to ask you about.
I have people come in my office and they always laugh. There's a Fat Joe platinum plaque for Make It Rain.
Right.
But it's for ringtones.
Oh, slight ringtone tangent is that my one and only office job I've ever had was working out of college making ringtones, and I definitely made a ringtone for that song. So in some way, I helped you get that plaque.
We got to realize there was a small period of time where digital really only existed at iTunes. Ringtones were a thing.
Oh, a huge thing.
You got them through, I think, your cellular provider.
That's exactly right.
They sold for $2.99 a piece. It was enormous business.
Oh, it was huge, yeah. The company I worked for was basically the middleman. So we had deals with labels and we had deals with cell phone providers.
Yeah.
And, we'd kind of just link up with providers and give them these catalogs. And
so I was at Capitol, and we had that success. We had signed other things, but nothing of anything. But I got to learn like from an independent perspective, like when you release a record, where the record goes, how it goes into distribution, how it gets delivered to DSPs, how physical works. Because in this day and age, I mean, physical's semi non-existent. It gave me a lot more intellect on the whole sphere of the music industry.
Sure.
But it also was like at a time where EMI, who owned Capitol, was purchased by a guy who owned all the rest stops on the Autobahn and like owned the most bars in the UK and owned the most movie theaters in Europe.
Great.
He had bought the company and like it happened to be in shambles. So like, and then the guy who brought me in, his deal was up. So he left and went to go run a new, same exact thing, but at Sony. And I just kind of sat there for like 3 or 4 months and like just did my management thing.
Right.
And like my quote unquote side hustle. I got a phone call and it was like, hey, it's so-and-so who's president of Capitol. Just letting you know, we're letting you go. HR will call you and figure out all your details and as far as like what you get. And I was like, oh yeah, I was waiting for this phone call. Like
right.
By that time, I wasn't even like in the office anymore. Like nobody was even from our side of things. Everybody just did whatever they wanted to do. I was like, yeah, whatever. And things kind of just kept coming. And then from that, Patrick Moxie, who I'd known for a long time, I went and had lunch with him and he was like, hey, why don't you take an office out of my office for free, be an A&R at Ultra. I was like, but I don't know, it's dance music. I remember Strictly Rhythm. I remember stuff like that, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you called it noise earlier in this interview, so.
And I was like, he's like, no, but that's not what I want. All these guys want rappers featured on their music. So I just want you to like, if I say, hey, here's this Wolfgang Gardner record, he really wants Cameron and Jim Jones on the song.
Was that you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I just talked to him about that record last week, yeah.
And he was like, can you make that happen? That's what I want you to do. And I was like, okay, cool. By the way, that was the hardest record I've ever had to make.
Okay, yeah, because I asked him about it, and he was, because they never did another dance record, right? As far as I know, that's the only dance record they ever did.
And at the time, you got to keep in mind, they didn't speak.
Oh, so they were
Cameron and Jim Jones weren't really speaking. No.
Okay, what did you have to do?
It just took a long time.
Yeah,
and
a fair amount of money, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it wasn't like ridiculous amount of money, but it just took a very long time to get the verses.
Yeah.
And finally, when we got them, it was like this took like 5 or 6 months,
Right.
you know? But in today's world, that's the same thing I go through with doing records with anybody with features. It's,
Sure.
You know, it's just it's not as easy as I would think it should be.
Right. Yeah, there's a million gatekeepers, and the whole system is more complicated than it needs to be, I think.
I came up with an idea yesterday. What if I wanted to get features for songs, for like high-level people, let's say that are in like the feature range of $30,000 to $50,000 a pop? Why don't I was like almost at a place where I was like, forget even going to their managers who don't respond to emails. I should just call the agent and book it like a show.
That's actually a great
And
idea.
I'll pay the 10% to the agent on top.
It's actually a really good idea.
Because if it's at least an agent would tell you yes or no. Not getting a response is so annoying to me.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way.
It's just like, tell me no.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just, yeah, in a lot of worlds, it just doesn't work.
So, I mean, is that once you started A&Ring for Ultra and getting those features, is that how you started to learn about the dance music world?
That's where I started to learn about the dance music world somewhat.
Yeah.
I still had no idea what Ultra really did or what they released, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't think I love Patrick and I love Ultra. They release so much fucking music. It's hard to keep tabs
It's overwhelming, yeah.
But I found SoundCloud. And when I found SoundCloud, and from being at Ultra too, I wasn't just records, I was also publishing. And the good thing on the publishing side, we had a lot of urban stuff on publishing. So every time an album came out, I had a certain way of doing research. You know,
Right.
So for example, B.O.B. put out an album, and I would go on to and find the track listing of the album. And I would see a name like Play for Keeps, produced by Valentino Khan. Who's Valentino Khan? I bet you he's not published.
Right.
So then I would Google Valentino Khan, and it would bring me to this really ugly website of that Valentino Khan made himself. And it directed me to his SoundCloud page, where I listened to a guy who had made hip-hop music, but had a song called Raucous that was Moonbaton that seemed really cool to me. And the entire Jay-Z and Kanye album remixed. And remixed in a way where I was like, there's no way in hell that he had the parts to all these
Right.
songs. But he just took it upon himself to figure out a way to remix this music. And I was like blown away. So I remember like hitting up Valentino, just like, hey, what's going on? My name's so-and-so, this, that, and the third. Like, would love to meet when I'm in LA. Met a time to meet with him when I was in LA. Came into the Ultra office in LA, played me a bunch of music. And I was like, I want to manage this kid.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about a publishing deal or whatever. I was just like, I was enamored just by like the talent that he had. And we just kind of kept the dialogue going.
So was that your first EDM or dance
Valentino
client?
was my first EDM dance client. Allegedly, the reason why he decided to go with me was during our meeting, I paused and took a phone call and handled a situation that some might have thought as something very difficult, very seamlessly
Okay.
and quickly. And that's what...
I think you were trying to get a rental car for somebody. One of your friends.
It was like doing a rental car for somebody. And just the way that I handled the situation, he was like,
That's the
wow,
guy.
that's the guy. We're at a different age now. You know what I mean? Like when I was 20 years old, I had like some street smarts, but I didn't have like certain things about, like I hadn't like matured in certain ways. In my 30s, I matured a lot faster with modern technology. I mean, you could become a manager of a guy and really believe in somebody and know how to utilize social media and have faith in your client.
Yeah.
And really learn a lot of stuff pretty fast. I was someone who, like, you know, as I got older, I don't scream and yell. I don't let the small things bother me.
Right.
But essentially, I was just enamored by Valentino. And, you know, I would say when I was at Ultra, so I worked on Wolfgang Gardner. I helped out a little bit on Cascade. Worked on Bloody Beetroot's album a lot. Signed a bunch of different things for publishing. I signed Carnage.
That's a big one.
Which ultimately, even though I say I signed, like everything I guess at Ultra was always looked at as like a collective thing. you
Sure.
know? I signed Mount Eden. I signed Mako. There's a lot of things I wanted to sign that ended up not getting signed which happens, that are really big now.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I always wonder both about that and about, was there anything that you thought was going to be really big that didn't end up going anywhere, really?
No, I never thought that anything was going to be really big that didn't go anywhere.
Oh, you got the golden touch, man.
Well, not necessarily. I just feel like it's hard to think back and what did we think? Look, everybody thought the Bloody Beetroots was going to be the next thing, the next Justice,
right?
And it just didn't happen.
Yeah,
still talented guy.
Yeah,
but amazing music. It just it just didn't the time. It took too long to make the album, and things changed.
Sure, yeah.
Timing
is
I was there I was there for Benny Benassi Cinema coming out, to Skrillex remixing it, to no one really knowing what that was, and then watching the Skrillex Cinema record go from this thing to what did I think it said, 8 to 10 million singles, it was some ridiculous, that song was humongous.
Yeah.
It was all just an experience. But during that whole time, I from Valentino is where I kind of met Bro Safari, and from Bro Safari is where I met Jet and Johns, and et cetera, et cetera. It's where, from managing Green Lantern, who I'd had for many years on the DJ side of things in hip hop, he got into EDM for a bit, and his agent put him on tour with Zed's Dead, and it was him and Zed's Dead and Branches, and
right.
I became very friendly with Branches and was a big fan of his stuff, and I started working with Sam.
So what?
And next, I kind of I built this really nice management roster that wasn't necessarily in my main wheelhouse, but now kind of an evolved wheelhouse.
Right. And it sounds like you kind of learned an appreciation for electronic music and dance music along the way.
I liked dance music because at the time in the 90s when I was DJing hip hop, it was what the bigger room always was.
Right.
But it was Armand Van Helden type stuff, which I really, really liked. For me, the stuff that I didn't understand was the drum and bass world.
Oh, okay. Which is interesting because the drum and bass world and hip hop actually had a pretty strong connection back in the day.
Yeah, it's weird. I just didn't like. It made me cringe trying to think how to mix that stuff.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I'll never forget. So I went to high school, no music business at all with it. Jesse Titsworth and I were in high school together. And we knew of each other. And I remember seeing him when I was 19. And at that time, he was a DJ, just kind of starting up. And he was a drum and bass DJ. And I remember leaving his house being like, that is the worst music I've ever heard in my life. And take that 360 over and managing Bro Safari, who was 1/3 of Evil Intent.
A giant drum and bass act.
And now I actually kind of have now that I can go back and listen to drum and bass, I do have, and there are things that I like about it. I'll never forget the Roots song featuring Eve and Erykah Badu. At the end of the song, Questlove goes into this drum pattern that is very much like a drum and bass drum pattern. I remember loving that.
Sure.
So it's I involved. You guys realize too, at that time, I was East Coast New York hip hop.
Yeah.
Would refuse to buy or purchase a Tupac album, and it was all about East Coast rap, and that was it.
Yeah.
So
it's much easier to have those blinders on when you're that age.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, what would you say? Just in general, what's the difference to you between managing hip hop and managing DJs and dance music?
In this day and age, because I managed I Love McConan for the last 3 years up until about a couple months ago.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities. It just really comes down, it's just all about personalities, and hunger too. You know what I mean? I work with people who will do everything that comes in for them. I don't even have to ask.
Right.
I work with people that, we put a plan in place and we have a 12-month trajectory for touring. I kind of look at things differently now too than how I look at things.
Sure.
And I think now with modern technology, with the internet, with the way that we consume music, which is completely different, this industry has changed 180 degrees in the last 10 years drastically. In a lot of ways, I feel for the better. But there's just a different way to look at things. And for each client that I work with, I'm able to develop a program for them that suits their needs.
Right. And it's really about more the individual relationships, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. When does an artist need a manager, in your opinion?
Artists feel that they need a manager immediately.
Well, of course. But I mean, when do they actually need a manager?
I don't think an artist needs a manager until they're in a place where their music is being recognized by not just a small sum of people, that they're making somewhat of an impact to the point where peers at a bigger level are looking at them, are supporting them, are utilizing their music in their live sets, and that there's a booking agent who has raised their hand, who sees their vision and is ready to get involved.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, right? Is that, all booking agents want artists they work with to have managers, and all managers want the artists they work with to have booking agents,
Yeah.
It's sort of a chicken and an egg thing.
I prefer to come in before the booking agent. When it's a new, like someone on the come up,
Yeah.
when there's an artist that already exists who's either never had a manager or is now looking for or has left their existing manager. I'm not one to come in and change things up.
Right. Well, that's
unless
maybe a
it's
good
needed.
question too, is do you have a preference as far as, building someone from the ground up versus joining something that's already kind of popping?
I love building something from the ground up. I would say in a lot of instances, Valentino Khan was from a little higher than the ground to now.
Sure.
I came in on Bro Safari, definitely not at the ground, and nowhere near,
Right.
where we are now. And it fit and it made sense, and we've done very well. But getting into business with somebody who's already making money
Right.
is a fantastic way to get into business with somebody.
Yeah.
Because you can instantly look and see, okay, what are your problems? What happened that you're no longer with your existing manager?
Right.
What didn't work?
Right.
And be able to hear all that information and
just take it with new
Yeah.
eyes and yeah.
and being able to have him be a manager and come from a marketing background and have an A&R background and being able to understand publishing and just understanding everything else. That to me is where I feel like my big suits are. But I think with a manager, it's about looking at what are the goals, how to exercise those goals, how to make that all come together and really grow
Yeah.
step by step with that.
Is that something you look for in an artist, somebody who has that vision?
I think it's great to get with an artist who definitely does have a vision. If they don't have a vision, but the talent is there, you can help them create that vision.
Right.
And there are people that I've worked with who haven't had that vision, and I've been able to exercise what that is.
Well, and talk a little bit about, at a certain point, you took your company and merged with Teamwork Management.
Yeah.
What was that like going from, being an independent company to now?
It's
being
it's so
part of a
funny.
larger-
I was thinking who did I sign at Ultra? Who did I sign at Ultra? And the biggest thing that I signed that's brought me to where I am today, I didn't even mention. I signed Flosstradamus.
There you go.
So with Flosstradamus, I became very friendly with Andrew McGinnis and Kevin Kasatsu, who own Teamwork, who manage Diplo and Major Lazer, Dylan Francis, A-Track, Floss, and now a slew of other people. And we just became very friendly. I worked very hard on Floss and getting music done. I was there for everything from Pills to now I've been involved in.
Yeah. I think that's how you and I met, is
Yeah.
through them.
Yeah, absolutely. The A&R thing was it's cool, but I'm a manager. That's always been my kind of thing. And we live in a world now where the manager is the A&R, he's the marketing, you're everything. So McGinnis and Kasatsu came to me and were like, dude, you should merge your management company with us. I was like, okay, let's see what that looks like. And it made sense, and we did it. I went to Patrick at Ultra and told him what I was doing, and I was like, look, it's up to you. And he was like, no, I want you to stay here. He's like, you can do that, and you can do this.
All right.
I was like, cool. So I did that for a while, and then things just got busy.
Yeah.
And I kind of downgraded myself from being full-time A&R and being at Teamwork to being a consultant. And then eventually I said to Patrick, I was like, look, dude, I'm not really hugely involved. And at the end of the day, I'm A&Ring for Floss on that side. And then we also manage Floss at Teamwork. It's kind of weird. And we just agreed that, you know what? Hey, congratulations. Let's just keep it going.
Sure.
We'll keep moving on.
Sure.
And eventually I became part of Floss's management team. So today it's, I have branches, Bro Safari, et cetera, Ducky, Dyro, Jet and Johns, Flosstradamus, and Valentino Khan.
It's a great roster, man. Are you feeling pretty loaded up? Are you looking to take more people? What does the future hold for you at this point?
I wouldn't say I'm looking to take something on, but when things always do pop up and I talk to different people.
Right.
I did manage I Love McConan for the last 3 years, and it was great. I think he was an amazingly talented guy. He had huge success with Tuesday. It's hard to follow that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you kind of about the aftermath of that single, which was so huge and brought him into so many people's ears and lives. Where do you go after that? What was the thought process?
He had other records. He just, McConan works. He comes from a space where like he sat in his house and made music every day and put it up on SoundCloud. Once you have success and have a platinum selling song and get nominated for a Grammy, you kind of you've made it.
Right.
Like now it's time to like dial in, tap into what your heart is musically. And we put out a ton of stuff, but nothing ever reached the level of Tuesday.
Right.
And although his single he released last week was, I was involved in, and the song had been done prior to me exiting, but that to me is like the answer, the next thing from Tuesday. And hopefully like that will be successuful for him and he'll keep going.
Well, I mean, for you, how do you feel about kind of your place in the industry right now? I mean, are you content? It sounds like you're enjoying what you're doing again. Maybe if you were burnt out at a certain point, you sound at least mildly excited now.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, this is my job. It's what I do. I mean, in anything that when you work and you're passionate about, you put a lot of time and effort in what you do. So, I could use 5 days on a beach somewhere with like no cell service.
Yeah, I think
probably 3 or 4 times a year. But I'm content where I'm at. I'm really happy where things are going with a lot of my clients. I'm open to finding new things. They just have to be right. But really, what I'm excited about right now is like, it's fun. When I was a kid, I hated reading. And when I was in elementary school, there was these books called Choose Your Own Adventure.
I love those
which
books.
I love to read. And that's what I feel like the music industry is for me today. Collectively, with the team that I'm working on, with the client or the situation, like it's Choose Your Own Adventure.
Sure.
And sometimes you do things and you fall off a cliff, but you're able to climb back up. There's no rule. They're like there's best practices,
right.
And it's great, but sometimes the best practices for Major Lazer might not be the best practices for Valentino Khan.
Sure.
But there's a lot of similarities for best practices for anything regardless of genre of music.
And there's less rules in general, right? At this point?
It's tough. It's tough. The only thing that bothers me in today's world is it's a numbers game. It's tough, Spotify, playlisting, featuring. It's, there's music coming. There's so much music coming out. It's so hard for a curator to like be on top of every single thing, and for a manager or a record label to understand like how people gravitate to what's on New Music Friday and what's on this playlist and what's on that playlist. I learn more and more each day about it.
Yeah.
And there's a certain way to go about it that has worked. For example, like Bro Safari's The Drop goes into beast mode on Spotify, which is a workout playlist. It has 1 million people. Now I think it has over 2 million. That instantly takes a song from being wherever it was to getting 30,000, 40,000 streams a day.
Right.
It was there for like 6 or 7 months.
That's huge.
Valentino Khan Pump did really well in the electronic space in Spotify. But when it hit beast mode, it did 30-some thousand streams a day.
Right.
It ran its course. It did its time in beast mode. Yesterday or 2 days ago, Bro Safari The Drop was back in beast mode. Why? I don't know.
I mean, they're just hand curated, right?
There are algorithms. There are certain things for some of those kind of mood playlists that do happen.
Right.
I'm not knocking on anybody's door asking for it.
Sure, of course.
It just happens.
Yeah.
In today's modern world of consuming music, there's many ways to consume music. I think as a music industry, a lot of us right now are putting a huge focus at Spotify. I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, Apple, I think is definitely still a priority in a lot of ways. They still sell a lot of digital downloads. Their streaming is coming together. The tough thing is when Spotify kind of like was coming up, I wouldn't say that Spotify controlled playlisting was something of the time where that's the main priority from a curated perspective. Their playlists are curated by a curator or a few different curators by genre. They're curated by mood. as well as algorithm based.
Right.
Spotify also shows us managers the we can go into a backend and see a lot of information, which is very helpful to us.
Information as far as
As far as daily streams of a song, overall audience of an artist, where they're coming from, who they are, what their age is, what their gender is, what playlists have playlisted the song, and you could dial in pretty. The one thing we can't see is the skip rate, like how many times, like if someone's listening to a song and skipping it, or how often that's happening within a playlist. But I think it's a frustrating thing, because I think a lot we're taught that like we want to have as many playlists as possible. It can become a very frustrating thing for people, because it's like, oh, we didn't get new music Friday, so like the song's over,
right?
And it's like there's just so much more than that, and there's just a way to kind of like work with whomever your team is to really build out, what your goals are within that system.
Yeah. Well, and I think, from the artist perspective, I've definitely felt that frustration. I know many other people too, where, if you miss that window, if you don't get the playlist, or you don't get that one repost or whatever it is, it's really easy to fall into that trap of just thinking that, you kind of just threw a song into the trash can. So I think, with everything moving as fast as it is, and with so much music coming out all the time now, it's really easy for songs to get lost. And have you ever had an experience where, a song caught on long after release, sort of after you thought it was done?
Jet and John's Fireball organically fell into beast mode and did 5 million streams in like 2 months, 3 months.
That's huge, and that came out years ago.
I remember long hitting me up. It's like, hey, dude, I've been meaning to mention this, but I always forget about mentioning this to you. It's like, I get all these weird tweets of people working out to Fireball. Why is that? And I was like, well, it was like, dude, it's been in this playlist for like this long, and like it's literally like jolted the song from just being a great song on an EP to like being a 7 million stream single.
So that's pretty nuts, man. That's the power of Spotify.
Yeah.
Do you feel like we're in this age where like everybody wants to be everything, right? So now labels also want to be platforms, and platforms want to be labeled. Like I feel like Spotify could even start like signing artists at a certain point.
I've heard rumors that they were going to start something. I don't know how true it is. It becomes then there's a very like you're favoriting your stuff versus this stuff.
Right.
I mean, Spotify can control the music industry as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean,
between Spotify and Apple.
Sure. And how does that evolve? Where do we go from here? Any predictions for what's going to come along next, and throw all that out the window?
It's tough. I mean, so much music is coming out. Forget about like the mainstream or the world that we're in.
Yeah. There's
just so much music coming out in general.
It's overwhelming.
That it's extremely overwhelming. I hate to say that, like for me, that like the way I kind of look at things from a best perspective, unless an artist completely disagrees, there's no reason to put out an EP. There's no reason to put out an album. Just because in today's world, people consume things so quickly and are on to the next so fast that if you put out an EP or an album, obviously you have your focus track, but everything else kind of goes quiet because it's already been out there, and like press is not going to write about it because it's already been out, or this, that, and the third. I mean, things just move so much faster today, and I think it's only going to get faster. Where like if a client came to me and said, oh, I want to put out an EP or I want to put out an album, I'd say, okay, everything's done. We have 10 songs done, or we have 6 songs done. Let's put these out every 6 to 12 weeks. And then once we're halfway or 70 or 80% of the way there, then it can like make up whatever the project of an album that you want to have.
Right.
It just, the project overall will just succeed so much better than giving it to people. I mean, like, a lot of people are like, well, or an artist, not say artist I manage, but just having conversations with artists or different people. Well, it's a project, and I want people to start it from the beginning and listen to it all the way through.
Right.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
15-year-old kids, 20-year-old kids, they weren't brought up that way. They don't listen to music that way. And it's an unfortunate thing. It's a very hard thing to train the way that we consume music today. People are going to consume music by listening to playlists.
Yeah, or on shuffle, or it's
or you go on Pandora. I mean, so many people listen to Pandora and they just plug in one thing and they let it rock.
Yeah. I don't know if it's better or worse. I mean, because the new generation, that's all they've known, right? So it's to them listening to a whole album front to back. It's like a strange concept, you know?
Yeah. Times change. I'm sure, we're just in a different place. Like, I can't fathom what's next after streaming.
Right.
If I think about it now, I couldn't fathom streaming back when CDs and digital downloads were coming into place. But thinking about it now, it makes the most sense. Like, everything should just be available streaming.
Yeah.
You want to watch the news on Channel 4, you click it and you watch it whenever the hell you want to watch it.
Yeah.
Like, I just think everything should be available for streaming. I mean, even something like the WWE, where like they have their own streaming service where you can literally watch every single thing. And I know that because Valentino is obsessed with wrestling.
Oh, I'm very aware.
But they control it. They own everything. You pay $10 a month and you can watch everything. So it's like,
it's smart, man.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, I've always thought this and always said this is, whatever the easiest way someone is able to get their content, that's how they'll get it. And so if a label or a TV channel or whatever it is, if they provide the easiest way, people will pay for it because they just want it the fastest way. Yeah. And for a long time with the music industry, the fastest way to get it was piracy, the easiest way. And maybe streaming is kind of the solution to that. It's just all available now.
No, totally. I mean, it's just a different way. I want to see the laws for streaming royalties to be in a much favorable space overall.
Yeah.
More favorable to artists. I'm in the music industry. I pay $10 a month for Apple. I pay $10 a month for Spotify. It's just something that I do. I don't use Apple yet, but I love the way that Apple looks.
Mm-hmm. The design is good.
Yeah, I hate the design of Spotify.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more manageable.
Well, and certainly better than the design of SoundCloud, which is what we were dealing with before.
No, and look, to me, SoundCloud is an amazing portal that if it wasn't for SoundCloud, most of my clients wouldn't have had the career
100%
trajectory that they had.
And so many other artists just we wouldn't even know about who are now major stars.
And now it's changed over. I mean, SoundCloud is still a thing more so in hip hop than anywhere else.
Do you see a future for SoundCloud at this point?
I do not.
Yeah.
No, I don't see it. I just think that they whoever they sat down with to kind of like funnel around ideas, like sitting around a round table, just were not the right people, and I just don't see it.
Well, it seemed like, when they came in, they had this like almost punk attitude, like we're going to come in and fuck things up, and they did, but then they kind of just kept in that vein even after they were now the big guys, and I think that
the major labels definitely like poked them in the back a little bit.
But I mean, I'm talking even like the shitty design of their mobile app, even down to something like that, like it just never got better.
I mean, it drives me crazy to if I click on a link in an email, it automatically takes me to the mobile app I have on my phone. I go to the mobile app and it's a new artist I've never heard of, and I'm listening to the song and I like it. I want to be able to go to their page. If I want to see their Instagram, their Facebook, and all that information on the mobile app, you can't see that.
The mobile app is the worst thing ever.
Those things for me, it's just like
that's it. It's a barrier. You can't do it.
It's just like it just drives me crazy because then I have to go on my computer and I have to do that, and then like. Because I'm listening to a lot of things, or people are sharing things to me, and then I like this artist. He could actually sound really great on this record that I have that I need a vocal on. And then I go to the mobile app, and I'm like, running around doing whatever I'm doing. It's like usually most people hit me like, oh, do you have a contact for so and so? And usually most of the time, if I don't have the contact, I just go to their Facebook page and it has the contact. Why people don't look there, I don't know, but. It's just like an easy thing to do. And then I have to go and Google that artist name's Facebook and then go to the Facebook page. It's just like it's a whole...
Well, and there's a little note for the aspiring artists listening to this too, is make sure to make yourself accessible,
Yeah, always have contact information. Like even if it's just like I don't know. And if someone reaches out to you, just respond.
Is there anything else you want to get out there, man? Anything we haven't covered yet? I feel like this was a pretty good trip.
It was really good.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great, man. Well, I usually try to end by figuring out where we first met, and I think we figured that out, which was, I think, through Kurt of Floss.
It was through Kurt.
I think we first talked on the phone because of him. Yeah.
Yeah, he put us in contact. When you were, I can't remember what it was.
I was out of management basically,
Yeah.
and talking to a few different people.
Yeah.
And I don't even think we were like circling you and me working together. I think
Yeah, it was just
more
like just kind of like to catch up and just kind of like where you're at. What do you need, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and thank you for that, man. I don't know if I ever thank you, but that was
No, totally. I mean,
that
look,
was like
you know,
a chaotic time in my
I
life.
try to be the
so-
guy that like is available for people because I've, now being 39, I'm kind of on the older side of things in a younger business. Successes to me are marked in many different ways. Wins are at many different levels. To me, losses are great things to have because you learn from them. At the end of the day, I've been in this industry for 19 years. It's been peaks and valleys. I will probably be in this business until I retire. But I really strive to be the guy who's like another voice to like kind of hear somebody out and or have questions for, or be able to like explain something they might not be aware of, or just to be able to have like kind of a conversation. I guess in my world, from growing up in the hip hop space, we would call that building.
Right. Which now we would call Let's Build Fam.
Yeah. So, I like to be able to be that for people. I like to be able to like educate.
Yeah, I mean, is that something you draw a lot of pleasure from or a lot of value from, is, connecting people and
Definitely.
kind of just
I mean, that's
contributing?
one of my biggest things. It's like, like even with my peers at Teamwork, it's like, oh, hey, I need to get a hold of so-and-so. It's like, connect.
Right.
I'm kind of like, I'm definitely like kind of a connector. That's something you have to be when you're an A&R, or even when you're a manager. I mean, you have to, you have to chase people.
Right.
Like we make this music and our clients make this music and whether it's featured or all this different stuff, there's a lot of stuff that goes in the background.
Well, and that's hopefully what we're exposing here, man. I think probably a lot of people just learned about some history on some of their favorite artists that they had no idea. So I appreciate you doing that, man.
No, definitely.
Final question that I ask everyone. Random question. You don't have to think too hard about it, but moment in your life, first thing that pops into your head when music really affected you or really changed something for you. And it could be, something from your childhood. It could be something from last week, a song you heard, something that gave you goosebumps, changed the way you thought, anything. Just first thing that pops into your mind.
Run DMC Raising Hell, 1986, and the Beastie Boys first album.
What did that do in your life?
I had just bought a cassette Walkman, and those are the first two cassettes I bought. I was 8 years old, and I was able to close my eyes and be transformed into a whole different world.
Yeah, amazing. And maybe that's what set you off on this whole trajectory, man.
No, totally.
Yeah, that's a great way to wrap it up, man. Well, yeah, Henley, thank you, dude.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man.
And thanks for the hospitality of Mr. Valentino Khan for letting us use his dining room table.
Valentino, any last words? You got to get up on that.
I had a great time taking a jacuzzi with you last night, Valentino.
You had a great time in the jacuzzi?
Yeah, although I think I have some scabies coming up.
Yeah. My last words are that I am not legally responsible for any waterborne illnesses that you may have contracted from my jacuzzi, and that it's been a pleasure working with you.
Great. Now you're fired.
That's not how it works. I fire you.
I was acting as if I was you.
Oh, yeah. What? Now you're fired.
Yeah. Bummer.
All right, that's the show. Thank you so much to Henley for sitting down, having that talk with me. Shout out to Valentino Khan for letting us use your amazing, ridiculous house. My name is Willy Joy. You can follow me on all social media at Willy Joy. You can email me backtobackpod@gmail.com. Send me anything. Send me your thoughts, your questions. I love answering questions from you guys. Sometimes I'll read them on the air. Send me your concerns. Send me your existential dilemmas. really anything. I'm here for you guys. backtobackpod@gmail.com. And that's it. I hope you guys had a great week. Hope you're staying warm. It's getting cool out there. And I hope to see you guys soon out on the road. Till next week, take care of each other, guys. Have a good one. Peace.